thought they had banished us forever. But now, finally, we have returned.
Welcome back to another Writer's Showcase, everybody. It's been a minute, but we're happy to be back. Let's start off with our good friend, Commissar Carl.
Hello, hello, hello.
Alrighty. Alright. Let's get the rest of the guests in. Let's start off with Perion.
Hey, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Well, duh. Anyone in chat yet? Let's see. Probably not yet.
Nothing else to do, really.
I mean, hey. No, I'm not going to play the Wheel of Time video game. He says, I don't know what that's in reaction to, but hey.
So this is just from... So Melvin Sherman asked, hey, I want you to play the Wheel of Time video game. I said, no, not interested, ever.
Pity. Oh, I just saw what's his name's review yesterday, Daniel Green's. I haven't seen the one with Brando Sando. Is that on YouTube, I wonder?
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll have to find it later. Although there's like 6 trillion things to watch now because Glidus and what's his name, Alt Swift-Text have a Pictionary, Song of Ice and Fire random theory Pictionary game that they're playing.
I love those guys. Those guys are hilarious. Those guys are freaking hilarious.
Yeah, they're brilliant, but unfortunately, they always seem to do it when I'm asleep. So I can never go on and ask them to prove that Moonboy is John's parents.
Well, he is. It's just self-evident.
Yeah, but I want to hear them come up with some convoluted reason why it's true, because those chaps can prove like any theory, especially Alt Swift-Text. He can prove anything.
These Alt Swift-Text.
Yeah.
He's a rascally lad.
Yes.
He's a wascally wascal.
And he has lots of bastards, but nobody knows. Sorry?
He's a wascally wabbit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Alrighty, and let's bring in our good friend, aspiring writer.
Stay still! You wet!
What even was that?
That's from Bakugan.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest shows ever made. What can you do? It's one of the greatest shows ever made. What can you do?
Yeah,
Oh, you're repeating yourself now. I think Dun's broken and needs a pod reset.
He's been broken.
Been broken for
True.
how long? Multiple years?
Yeah, I think you were born broken. And then it got worse.
Might be, yeah.
What even is this stuff? Oh, that's just some paper. Okay. So let's see.
So how are we going to do this?
How are we gonna do this? I'm probably gonna have.
It's been so long, but I don't even know where the fuck I left off.
Well, let's see. I remember there was a meeting. There was a meeting with a bunch of people. I think they were going to send someone against Vampra or something. No, Vampra, because Vampra turned good. They were going to send something against their enemies. Yeah, you probably should do a brief recap. Also, I'm not sure where Triple fits in. Why do we keep calling her Tribble?
Oh, am I going first?
Yeah.
I guess so.
I mean, I'll go. I can go second. I probably shouldn't go after second, but I can go second.
Okay. Any other time constraints for anyone?
Nope.
No.
Pretty open.
So I guess it's either me or Aspiring. You want to go first, or should I?
I mean, I can go first
You
if
go
you want me
first.
to.
All right. That's fair. Okay. So, if there are no further objections, we'll continue with the next chapter of the Waters of Akra. In the last chapter, Shenna, who was just freshly discharged from the Magisterium, got to meet the head of the Angara Consortium, the eponymous Master Angara. And he rather took a shine to her and decided to offer her a position. So Shenna is now heading to his private island, as all billionaires of any repute have, where she will attend a meeting with some of the consortium bigwigs. So, without further ado, this is Chapter 30, Meeting the Consortium. And you're sure Master Angara won't mind our being here? Shenna asked as she stepped out onto the wooden dock below Angara's Moon Lake estate. We are rather early for the meeting. Don't worry about it, Sebastian assured as he dismounted the boat after her. I've never known Master Angara to raise the issue. Very well then, Shenna said, casting her gaze back across the lake, her eyes tracing along the horizon where only the faintest silhouette of Akra could be seen at the place where the two endless expanses of blue joined. In the meanwhile, Sebastian said, starting up the dock to the magnificent estate that dominated the small island, how about a quick tour of the grounds before everyone else arrives? Soon Shenna was following Sebastian up a flight of low stone steps that switchbacked lazily through a gauntlet of tall hedges. The slope was too steep for a direct path, Sebastian explained, and the hedges helped to anchor the soil against erosion. And besides, Angara valued his privacy. As she walked, Shenna noted the small arrowhead shape of the leaves on the hedges. That, along with the bunches of withered stubs where clusters of berries had once sat ripening, was all the evidence she needed to identify these hedges as songberry bushes. Shenna turned up to glance up at the sky, and sure enough, there was the dark shape of Athanasius soaring lazily above her. Shenna smiled up at him. So this is where you've been getting your berries, you little rascal. At the top of the stair, they were met with a towering wall of ivy-clad stone, and they passed beneath a wide arching gate into a broad fairground where a small team of workmen went back and forth, trimming the grass with clippers and scythes. Sebastian explained that the estate had been originally constructed as a castle, back during the times when warfare had been much more common in the region. This expansive stone central enclosure, he claimed, was to have been a training ground and a marshalling yard for the archers and crossbowmen and arbalestiers who were to have manned the parapets against an assault that ultimately had never come. Angara had purchased the property many years ago and found it in an overgrown and terribly dilapidated mess, and he had put a lot of work and sunk a lot of money into restoring the grounds to a more reasonable condition. Shenna followed Sebastian across the fairground into a large building set into the far wall, likely the main building of the estate complex. They entered into a vast hall, a full 3 stories high, judging by the 2 balconies at one end of the chamber, and with a raised platform at the other end, probably where a throne had once sat. A long table ran down the center of the hallway, flanked by great fireplaces on either side. And those hearths sat cold, of course, the fires that once roared within them, now replaced with heat-hanging lamps that burned without heat. This, Sebastian declared, was where the meeting was to take place in only a few more minutes' time. The tour continued down a tight spiral of uneven stairs into a series of catacombs that Sebastian gleefully announced as the dungeons. Sure enough, rows of iron-barred cells lined the walls on either side, though their doors were broken off, probably melted down for scrap. And the only prisoners these cells now held were supply crates and sacks of meal and other foodstuffs. Then it was up another stairwell to the ground floor, and from there up a much grander stairway to the second floor. Or was it the first? I've heard some people refer to the bottom floor of a building as the ground floor, Shenna said as they climbed the steps. Apparently the first floor is the first one you have to walk up to reach. Is that true? Sebastian shrugged as he reached the top of the stairs. I don't believe we have any ground floors in Acre. The two upper floors were given over to guest accommodations. Servants went back and forth, preparing a bed in each of the chambers. It was customary among the consortium to stay the night after a meeting, apparently. There was no master bedchamber, though, there being no need for one, for according to Sebastian, Angara usually spent his nights at one of several other properties throughout Acre. Finally, Sebastian led Shenna through a doorway on the third floor, and they stepped out onto the walkway atop the walls. The view wasn't quite as breathtaking as what Shenna had seen on the waterfalls on the way to Sparks Valley, but it was still spectacular in its own right. Shenna could see the great clouds of spray rising from the churning waters at the base of the falls where the Rock River poured into Moon Lake. Scattered throughout the waters all lay the familiar islets that Shenna had seen from above, and to the south the distant silhouettes of Acre had risen to present their full facades, and below that a small cluster of boats slowly making their approach to the island. Ah, and that'll be the rest of the consortium, Sebastian said, starting for the exit. A few minutes later, the two of them were back at the docks, welcoming the new arrivals as they dismounted their boats. First to disembark was Hendrika, a tall woman caught somewhere in that strange place between youth and middle age, with hair spun of the fires of sunset and a strong, husky voice that resounded with hard-won confidence. She was dressed in all red to match her hair, from her calf-length skirt and boots beneath it, to her tunic and vest, cut like a man might wear, to the heavy winter cloak resting on her shoulders. She greeted Shenna with a firm handshake and a warm smile that quickly had Shenna feeling at ease. Irval, by contrast, greeted Shenna with an eager embrace that might have been reserved for a long-lost cousin or the reunion of close friends. It had been far too long, he claimed, since they'd welcomed a new face into the consortium, and he was excited beyond the tell of words at the prospect of getting to know her. He was a young man, perhaps of an even age with Sebastian, and with a sunny mop of wavy blonde hair that paired perfectly with his bright and cheerful demeanor. Devram was the next arrival, a solidly built man in his middle years. He was dressed all in brown and sported a close-cropped beard of the same color. His voice rang with the same thick, aggressive working-class tones as Talene, and his face bore the weather-beaten look of a sailor. He had the appearance of one who had crawled up from the very bottom of society, fighting for every scrap along the way. Although Irval gleefully reported that, in fact, no, he had inherited everything that he'd ever owned. He just put on the facade for show. Fryn came next, apparently several years older than Devram, but not showing nearly as much wear on her face. Green and gold were her colors, artfully blended into a dress fit to make even a Lyra smolder with envy. Shenna was delighted to learn that Fryn was also ex-magisterium, just as much as Fryn was horrified to learn that Magister Parnulf was still teaching after all these years. There were others, of course. Torben and Cendric. And finally, Angara arrived, and the motley gathering followed him up the steps into the estate to begin the meeting. Before long, the entire company was seated around the table in the main building, and the discussions began. Angara started off by formally introducing Shenna to the group and inviting her to give an explanation of her discipline and its potential. Having already had practice with Angara earlier in the day, Shenna's presentation was smoother than it had ever been before, and the group was not shy in expressing their interest in the promise of her undead constructs. There's no shortage of manufactuaries throughout Accra that would gratefully benefit from your construct labor, Hendrika said. And I can always find the use for more oarsmen, Devram added. More oars in the water means bigger and faster barges, which means higher profits. I know of plenty investors who would be eager to get in early on a new industry trend, Girval said. Money won't be an object. It's this prototype of yours that has me really interested, Friend said. Once it's demonstrated, I'm sure there will be plenty of applications. It may even be possible to hire them out individually. Let us draw up a basic idea to start us out, Hendrika said, producing a sheet of parchment and a pen. Something simple and lightweight that we can get going very quickly to serve as proof of concept for a larger idea. In no time at all, they had hammered out a plan. Among the consortium's many operations was a linen manufactory down in the south of Accra. Worktown, that area was called, by the waterfalls. The work process was a fairly simple one. Much of it involved repetitive movements at the looms. It was the perfect place to ease into a new industrial paradigm. In 2 days, Shenna would tour the manufactory and formulate a detailed scheme to implement her undead constructs. There were issues to be worked out, of course, such as the matter of actually sourcing the bodies for the undead constructs. Shenna naturally had an answer prepared. There were a number of morgues and mortuaries throughout the city where deceased bodies were gathered and stored prior to being claimed by their next of kin. Indeed, this was how Magistress Karna had acquired the majority of her constructs. Devram suggested employing executed criminals, but Shenna was prepared and was able to quickly downplay the suggestion by calling into question the quality of such bodies. Thankfully, the concept was shelved for the time being. Fryn raised a much more pressing matter. Undead labor was critically dependent upon a steady supply of magic, all of which was presently supplied by the Magisterium at fixed rates. The question was whether or not the absence of wages and increased productivity would be sufficient to offset the cost of magic. Shenna acknowledged the dilemma, but assured that significant savings could be realized by purchasing magic in full-grade crystals and so taking advantage of purchasing at scale. She could work out the full calculations once she had all the relevant data before her. With the plan laid out, the conversation proceeded to other topics. One by one, the other members came forward to present their roles within the consortium and report how business was proceeding for the moment. Devram had added 3 more barges to his trading fleet and was anticipating a reasonably profitable spring season. Irval reported that levels of cash on hand were holding steady and that there would be plenty left over for new projects once the monthly dividend payments were handed out next week. Fryn brought news that a certain issue with one of their suppliers had been ironed out at last and regular shipments would resume. Hendrika's report was the most intriguing of all. She claimed that she was working on a new method of charging crystals at scale, one that didn't involve moonlight. Shenna was immediately hungry to know more. The Magisterium had only ever taught her about charging crystals by moonlight. Fryn shared her enthusiasm. Anything that might possibly chip away at the Magisterium's monopoly on magic was a welcome development. As the meeting went on, it gradually dawned on Shenna that Hendrika was really the one in charge. She was always ready to draw up a concrete plan of action and never missed an opportunity to encourage a new idea or a scheme. And in turn, the rest of the consortium afforded her a great measure of respect, many times asking her specifically for advice. Master Angara, by contrast, spoke little, only intervening when some critical decision was to be made, or to remind all that the consideration of profits must be their first concern. It seemed odd for the director of the consortium itself to take such a hands-off approach to running his own organization. But then he was quite an elderly gentleman. He may simply prefer to delegate the mundane minutiae of management to someone with more youthful vigor. Eventually, the meeting drew to a close, and a parade of servants entered the hall to deliver trays of steaming, savory meats, bowls of fresh-cut fruits, and sweetened with rich vinegar, stacks of freshly baked pastries, and bottles of silk-smooth wine to wash it all down. The blended aromas of sumptuous spices serenaded Shenna's senses, kindling her appetite into a roaring, ravenous fire before the servants had even finished setting the table. And from the very first bite, the flavors danced across her tongue and slipped down her throat with a flourish and a bow. Not even on high festival days back in Riverwatch had Shenna ever experienced such a wonderful feast. Conversation passed seamlessly from business into the realms of idle pleasantries and those personal histories that had not yet been shared. Shenna's tale was met with much excitement and wonder from the consortium. Devram asked for a detailed description of the boatman who had borne Shenna to Acre so that he might reward that man's generosity with a job or a bonus. And Fryn commented that the Magisterium seemed determined not to change with the larger world. Well, whatever else you've endured along the way, Hendrika said, as Shenna's tale drew to its conclusion, we are all glad that you've finally found the place where you belong. Me too, Shenna said, slipping another pastry from off the stack. And that's the end.
Very nice.
Oh, Trip. Oh, an actual audiobook. Thank you very much. Always flattering.
Yeah. Audiobook's are not worthy of Not-At-Cultrap's greatness. This is true. He is an excellent audiobook reader, to say the least.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, the Magisterium monopoly. Yep. Valerian's right on the money.
Right on the money, so to speak.
And I do mean the money.
Oh, yeah.
Show me the money. There's money in the banana stand.
We've got to have money.
Oh, no. Oh, no. What was that from again?
Tom and Jerry movie.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, the
You
Tom
got
and
the
Jerry
clip
movie,
lying
yeah.
around, don't you?
No, I just know of the movie because I saw the NC review.
Yeah, so we're setting up what Shenna will be doing in the consortium, and we're introducing some new characters that she'll be associating with.
Yep. There were a few characters and an empty spot where I have to add in more names because I accidentally left that blank, but don't worry, those characters aren't significant.
You could just say a whole glob of others were there too, but they were just sort of no names, so who cares?
Yeah.
You'd have to put it better than that, though.
Yeah. I will say this, though. This is almost everybody. There is only one more significant character that I have to introduce, and then the cast will basically be complete until the end of the story.
Oh, okay. Are we going to meet any of the people from the Magisterium again? Are any of them going to turn up?
Of course. Of course we're going to meet them again. Gareth's coming back. Kieran's coming back. Lysandra's probably going to get something. Elira's definitely going to show up again.
Oh, good.
Yep.
And what about undead? Yannick.
Yannick? Well, unfortunately, he's not getting any more lines.
Bother.
So we won't be hearing his voice again.
Oh, well.
And that's basically all I can say.
I'm guessing that eventually there'll be, just as with the Magisterium, there'll eventually be a moral conflict that Shenna will have to deal with. I'm just sort of guessing off the top of my head that
Yeah,
that would,
the moral issue. Yeah, someone posted in the Discord the idea of using that video about using zombies as slaves, and yeah, I did get a lot of good suggestions from that. Unfortunately, a lot of the major plot points are already set, but I was able to possibly work some moral quandaries in there, and yeah, I probably will get something out of that.
yeah, because I assume it's because how far are we? This is part 2, right?
Yeah, this is the beginning of part 2.
How many parts are there going to be?
Well, there's 3 main parts, and then there's an interlude between parts 2 and 3, and then the finale. But those ones are probably going to be shorter.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, this is still like first half.
yeah. So it can't just be Shenna lived happily ever after with the Angara consortium. That
Oh
can't
God, no,
be the end of the story.
no, that would defeat the entire purpose. This is the fantasy equivalent of a megacorp.
Yeah, that's the other.
And then
That's the
Jenna
other
went
thing.
off to work for Amazon.sauron.com and lived happily ever after, but everyone else didn't because fuck 'em, capitalism, bitch.
Oh yeah, that would that would be a twist.
Yeah, that's
That'd
the
be
one you're
unexpected.
writing.
That would be unexpected. Yeah, that's what I'm guessing, because I mean, it seems the Magisterium seems all very wonderful at first, and then you find out that it's kind of rot. So I'm guessing it's kind of similar here, where everyone seems lovely and hi, we're so glad you're here. Yeah. But then eventually it's going to be. Ugh.
Yeah, well, we'll see exactly what is going on in a few more chapters, but it will be a doozy.
God.
Oh, I know you were disappointed, but when I say that Yannick won't be getting any more lines, I mean specifically that he won't be getting any more lines.
Okay, he does still exist.
Yeah. And you may have noted that during his last appearance, he basically lost his voice.
Oh,
So that's
yeah.
as specific as I can be.
Okay. Well, we don't want to get too specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, that would be a riot if it did end up working for Amazon and lived happily ever after.
All right. Don, you were going to say something?
No, it's really good work. I'm very much intrigued to see where this goes to.
Well, luckily I got a nice long train journey ahead of me, so I should probably have plenty of opportunity to work on the next chapters.
God.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, God help us. What do you got?
Okay. Well, it's been a while. This is from the Lady Margaret. Again, you may recall she got into a conflict with the Emperor because the Emperor wanted her in her harem, and also she wanted to free slaves and stuff, and they didn't like that, so they're sending an army against her and her friends.
Oh God, freeing slaves! How cringe!
I know, it's just disgusting. It's woke.
No, it's just Annie from season 3, and then they dropped that of a season 8.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure that I totally drop it by the end of the story and make Margaret turn into a homicidal mass murdering maniac. Oh, whoops! Sorry, spoiler. But so right, Margaret and her friends Barama and Muku have raided the camp of the Sandaranians, who represent the emperor, roughly speaking, although Barama is actually Sandaranian too. There are different nationalities in the empire. Not nationalities, ethnicities, different ethnic groups in the empire. So Margaret and her friends have raided the camp. The camp is being led by Daraimi, who is a psychopath, and Burunu, who is the governor who wants to marry Margaret because he's in love with her and her lands. So hopefully that's enough of a recap. If not, I can explain things afterwards. So this is the aftermath of the attack. So the raid. So let's see what happens. By then, Margaret, her party, except 2 who had been slain, and the Sarangis had already fled through the secret passage. You might think that Daraimi and Burunu would have just had their slaves dig around a bit, but they were not very bright, I fear. Daraimi was humiliated, and both he and Burunu knew this full well, which didn't in the least stop Burunu from pointing it out several times. If you hadn't set 1/3 of the garrison after a handful of mangy peasants, maybe it would have gone better, he added. As is, we'll have to hold a meeting. Don't try to teach me my expletive job, you cross-dressing lady monkey. I know we have to have a meeting. Expletive it. I'll schedule it for tomorrow. I need to beat up a Sarangi. Looked like you already did, murmured Burunu, adjusting his toupee. He'd lost his chief toupee and was now wearing a spare. Now, if only my spies would get back, maybe we'd actually accomplish something despite you. The news spread through the camp that Daraimi and his goons had met their match, so that what ought to have been a walkover had proved anything but. Worse, the feast that had supposedly been pacified turned out not to be so pacified after all. And in addition to the sorties from Tserthaton, the assailants had to deal with raids from the northeastern fiefs, those that hadn't been completely ravaged. The army were getting ever the grumpier the longer the war dragged on, with little to show for it. The secret passages were only part of the problem. The Sandaranians had little expertise in guerrilla warfare, and the natives knew the terrain far better than the invading forces. Most of the attacks were now made not only without the leader's authorization, but without their knowledge, this being especially true of the northeastern fiefs. The whole thing was becoming a bother. This does not in the least mean that all went well for Tserthaton, the castle of Tserthaton. There was still easily enough destruction to embitter the defenders against the court, but not enough to cow them. The commentary on Odira says, either make your enemies your friends or crush them. Daraimi had not even attempted the former, and had failed signally at the latter. Not surprisingly, the meeting next day between the commanders and their officers was a raucous affair, with Burunu and Daraimi loudly, and, in Daraimi's case, colorfully blaming each other for the fiasco. The officers, the more professional ones, were taken aback, while the less professional were alternately hooting and guffawing or yelling curses themselves. Daraimi ordered a slew of lashings, which some of the officers flatly refused to carry out. Discipline was not good, and no amount of cruelty could make it better. Why should we punish them for your mistake, not so great one? You're the one who sent 1/3 of the camp away in a wild goose chase after a lot of dirty peasant rebels. He has a point, observed Burunu. I've met red-masked lizards with better skills at command. Shut the expletive up, you expletive, shot back Doraimi. Make me, retorted Bruno. Doraimi wished, not for the first time, that he could have Bruno flogged. It was at this opportune moment that Bruno's spies returned from the western border of the province of Ihalamu. Report! Bellowed Doraimi, much too loudly. Great ones. The spy's leader prostrated himself before Bruno and Doraimi, and Bruno made a weary gesture indicating that he should rise. Oh, so sorry, there's a typo. Bruno. Sorry about that. Half a second. There. No. There. Sorry. Made a weary gesture indicating that he should rise. The leader did so with alacrity, and Doraimi, who was in a punishing mood, made a mental note to have him punished for that later. I fear the news is not good, continued the leader. An army is gathering on the border between Darzaz and Ihalamu, the provinces of Darzaz and Ihalamu. It seems the Duke is marshalling his forces. Filthy traitor, said Doraimi. Wait, you silly goose, said Bruno. Let's consider his intentions. I've always found the Duke of Darzaz to be very polite and respectful of Sandoranian authority. Very different from these Kalamans, whom Sawaro has puffed up with pride for whatever reason. We should send messengers asking him what he is doing before we jump to conclusions. One reason our assault has been unsuccessful is that, besides being brutal, there has been no attempt to think strategically and ponder before acting. There was a murmur of agreement from the more responsible officers. We should also send messages to court, informing them of what is happening, said Bruno's adjutant. Exalted's advisors may have wise counsel to give us. No one, of course, not even Doraimi, expected wisdom from Exalted himself. Pardon me. As would become clear later, Duke Edrion had not sent his forces to the border because he had undergone a sudden change of heart and decided to support Margaret after all. But the presence of an imperial army next door in Ihalamu wreaking destruction had given him the jitters. He wanted to ensure that none of the soldiers would be tempted to spill over into the province of Darzaz and indulge in a little rapine there. The Darzazian army didn't perhaps amount to very much, but with some skillful deployment it could look greater than it was and dissuade any invaders. But Doraimi and Bruno knew nothing of that, nor did Darzaz play a role until some time afterwards. How many were they? Said Bruno. It looked like several thousand. Great one. It covered the entire border, so far as we could see. Of course, we only saw a small part of it. These provincial little barbarians can't possibly have that many, said Doraimi, waving his left arm scornfully. I saw what I saw, Great One. Maybe it was less than it seemed. I don't know. All right, we'll send a message telling him he better not try anything, or we'll roast him into filthy little forest dwellers. I'll dictate a letter, said Bruno wearily. Who knew what rot Doraimi would say if Bruno didn't forestall him? That decadent fool ruined everything he touched. You'd better, blustered Doraimi. Meanwhile, I'll ask Exalted for reinforcements. Maybe they can help us deal with the local cockroach scum expletive here, too. Just so they answer only to me. Very good, said Bruno. The war in Ihalimu hasn't gone very well, and with luck, Exalted will appoint another commander, one who has a particle of a notion what he's doing. You managed to massacre multitudes of innocents without getting the slightest actual advantage over the rebels. Cruelty and incompetence. Bravo! And Daraimi replied, You whinge and whinge and whinge. Go back to your filthy little tent and cry, you little expletive. Meeting adjourned. Write your stupid letter and I'll write mine. Well, dictate. Good, said Bruno. Just don't have to look at your stupid, ugly, decadent little face. How far along are we? Almost. At this point, things might have got ugly. Unfortunately, they heard the drum beating outside the tent. From the pattern of beating, they knew it was one of the higher-ranking officers. In fact, let's see if I can say this, Mesha Kulai Eroku. Report, barked Araimi, stomping his feet. Where were you? We could have used you when the Crow Lady infiltrated the encampment. You better have a good excuse or I'll order 36 lashes. Great ones, said the officer, prostrating himself politely enough, but allowing the slightest tinge of sarcasm to color his voice. We took a detachment after some rebels raided the encampment here and headed northwest. It was on the orders of Great One Duke Daraimi, who was so wisely berated me just now, that I took a third of the soldiers and followed them to the northwest until we reached their village. And then, put in Bruno, he had a sinking feeling in his stomach. We had an explicit order to burn down any village that harbored rebels, said the officer. So that is what we did. Excellent! Daraimi slobbered a bit. I wish I'd been there. The 36 lashes are cancelled. Bruno wrinkled his nose in distaste. We've made even more enemies. Ever the longer we wage this war, the more the people will hate us, and the harder the task of ruling them will become. Oh, dry up, laughed Daraimi. You're such an emaciated, shiny rat. They'll be our enemies anyway. All punishments are cancelled. Well, most anyway. I'll go over the list. We may have fun yet. Fun, muttered Bruno. But Daraimi had already left, probably in search of another Sarangi or three to do things to. And that will do for now.
Okay, you seriously need to watch your expletive mouth.
I'm
This
sorry.
is just expletive disgusting that what sort of thing I am hearing. I mean, it's just expletive.
I'm frightfully sorry. I hang my head in shame. You can ban me now, Blight Lord.
I've seen people do worse.
That's what you think. You don't know what expletives he was saying.
Probably can, actually.
I mean, different cultures have different standards for what they think is, indecent of that sort of thing,
Yeah.
Back in Shakespeare's day, one of the most shocking things you could say was, by God's hooks, literally swearing by the nails that held Christ to the cross. That would suck all the conversation out of a room in an instant. But nowadays, you say, Gadzooks. It just doesn't hit with the same punch,
Did you have to say that out loud?
Yeah.
Brother.
As opposed to all the other stuff that Shakespeare says that has suddenly become, offensive. Sort of stuff like, Villain, thou hast undone our mother. Villain, I have done thy mother.
That's just
It's
freaking
Shakespeare.
hilarious.
Look it up.
Yeah, yeah, Titus Andronicus is where the Yo Mama joke comes from.
Okay,
He
so
also,
it's...
he also invented the knock knock joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Hamlet. Knock knock. Who's there? Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself. A 400-word long knock knock joke, that play is.
So that's why I wrote Hamlet.
Also, he was angsting about his dead kid. And
Oh, well.
that sort of thing. He was kind of going through a midlife crisis at the time. He wanted to make sure his output got like serious. He was getting much more of a serious audience, so he didn't want to do so much of the crowd pleasing stuff. But you have to throw it in because you never forget your roots. And also, he lost his perfect clown, Will Kemp, the funniest man who ever lived. So,
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. So basically, Polonius would have probably been the last role that he actually played.
What, Shakespeare?
Oh no, Shakespeare always did that, but Will Kemp. Polonius would have
Okay.
been the last role that Will Kemp would have played. So yeah, no more bottoms, no more Dogberries from Much Ado About Nothing.
That's
No
why
more
all of Shakespeare
Sorry
after that.
Yeah, I mean he wrote for the guys he had.
Yeah, that's what one did during the golden age of opera too.
Right for the parts you got. But yeah, I'm definitely hearing a lot of characters in these stories. They're getting really emphatic. They bluster and stuff.
Yeah. Well, these chaps are kind of emphatic anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Thinking with the hair on their chests.
I
Yeah,
agree with that quote.
Derimy definitely does. Well, Derimy, no comment. Sometimes it's fun just to just to have villains be villainous.
Oh, surety.
So, I gather it was passable at least.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, good one, Trip. Good one.
No comment, Trip, lady, but yes, kind of. Well, you do get what a Saranji is, right? That's clear from the context.
Yeah, some kind of harem girl.
Yeah, basically. It's not a feminist paradise.
We've been spending most our lives living in a
Yeah, kind of.
paradise.
Yeah, I was hearing a bit of stuff that made me think of the communist rabbit bits.
Oh, no.
Took me right back to the days of the Politburo.
Oh, dear.
Of all the songs you've
There's
ever
blast from the
sang,
past.
that was probably
Sorry?
the worst one. Of all the songs Dunn has ever sang on stream or whenever, that was probably the worst one he butchered.
Well, luckily, I was talking over most of it.
Gangster's Paradise or Amish
Gangsta's Paradise. I liked the song. Boat.
Oh, I've never listened to Gangster's Paradise. I'm only familiar with Amish Paradise.
Of course you are. Of course that's the only one you heard. You wouldn't have heard the original.
Amish paradise. Well, it kind of goes with the whole Mormon thing, too.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he's been spending most of his life living in Mormon paradise, so.
Yes, it's a pretty good summary of Salt Lake, to be perfectly honest.
Various terms for, of course, I would know the various terms for harem girls. Well, you kind of have to if you're going to study this period of history. the Sandranian court in particular. And of course, I had to bring back the cross-dressing monkey thing.
Indeed.
See, Trip agrees with me. Sigh, you're not listening to Gangsta's Paradise.
What? Probably need to.
Yes.
Guess I will at some point.
Do it while you're at the gym today.
I guess.
When you're humping the gym machine.
If it helps you feel better, I didn't know it either, but it probably doesn't because I'm not meant to know it.
Have you listened to either version, though, Valerian?
No.
Yeah, so that's better than just listening to the Amish version and then just not listening to the original when you know there's an original.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeremy, I'm not Jeremy. Dunn is meant to know these things. Why did I call you Jeremy?
Jeremy?
It's easy to get confused.
First name Dar, last name I. No, middle name I, last name me.
Yeah. I mean, all these names have, like, cultural things. Jeremy is named after one of the Karat's disciples, and he's the chap who founded their religion. So, Karat is. So they all have some kind of cultural reference or some kind of meaning. Most of them do, anyway.
Cool.
Yeah, try to do that.
Indeed. Very nice.
All right. Aspiring writer, I think you're next.
Yes. I'm surprised Valerian remembered anything, so maybe he will understand something of this.
Yeah, I remember a decent bit.
Yay. Fucking hell. How do I do a little recap on a chapter 39?
I know the feeling.
What are the relevant bits? Okay, so Vampra is a character who used to work with the Ascending Territory, who then turned coat after discovering some very fucked up shit involving a purging of host babies, superpowered babies, and has now agreed to help the Dissenters, our protag group, killing one of the sources, who is one of the leaders of the Ascending Territory. So basically, bad guy turned good guy, and has agreed to help good guys. She is not a part of them. She has not agreed to join them. She just agreed to help them on this one thing. And the other character is Ordin Ran, or his codename Preeminent. He is one of the 7 leaders of the Dissenters, specifically in charge of coordinating squads, and is the person who has to head the assassination, which he has been forced to do because his other council members want him dead, or at the very least discredited. And he and the rest of the squads do not like this because they know they're basically being sent to die. And that's all. I think that's enough context, hopefully. And then here we go. Ordin Ran watched as Vampra moved around the hologram projector so she could see him and the entrance at the same time, side in hand. She was silent as she glared at the entrance the commanders had left through. She finally asked, "None of them noticed?" Ordin Ran shrugged. One of them seemed to notice as he was leaving. Her glare shifted to him. "And you're letting him go?" Nodding, he explained. Stopping him then would have drawn too much suspicion. Hopefully, he did not actually notice, and if he did, he keeps it to himself. He is thankfully not the sharing type. The not sharing type are just more discerning about sharing. He mentioned seeing a portal peephole. He won't, he interrupted. And if he does, I will handle what comes of it. That's final. Her eyes stinned in displeasure, but she acquiesced with a nod. I gave you a report on who I suspected would be assigned to you. Have you finished it? She nodded, and he asked, thoughts? You must know your commanders well to have guessed most of who they would have suggested. I trust my commanders to know what best to do. Can make them easy to predict. Which is how I know your squad will be told to watch you closely and kill you if you step out of line. She gave him a sideways glance. Is that supposed to be a warning or a threat? Let's go with both for good measure. I've given them a direct order to not act rashly, so they should at least not be insubordinate to your orders, but you'll be walking through thorn bushes the entire way. Don't get caught. Is there anything useful you can tell me with that threat and warning? Pressing his lips together, Ordenrand considered. Officer Serial Militia will be who determines whether or not the tide turns against you. Vampira's brow knitted together. How so? Her sister is higher in rank and will be the highest there. Officer Uriel is not exactly popular among those she works with. Presuming you don't do anything warranting action with my order, Uriel wouldn't be able to convince them to take any. Serial, however, might be able to. That doesn't sound like how you described her in your file. He bowed his head. She is not authoritative, but she will be taking actions, but not necessarily against you. My guess is she'll try to cool tempers and promote caution against any actions against you until given reason to, which is why I'm saying, stay on her good side. Understood. One you didn't mention being part of the team was the pilot, Carol Revens. Why the exception? She won't be part of your ground team, nor do I foresee her making any bumps for you. Don't try and make conversation with her, though, he suggested. She won't take your presence on her ship kindly. She's Dissenter-born. Vampire cocked an eyebrow. Is that what you call them? Dissenter-born? Ordenrand returned a look. You have a different name for them? Vampire took a moment to answer. The sources have many names when referring to you. After a pause, a slight chuckle escaped Ordenrand. That does not surprise me. You'll have to tell me about them sometime. The sources, or their names for you? Both. He gave her a sidelong glance. I do intend to consult with you upon your return when planning the actual assassination. In private or public? I am hoping public. This operation should help ease tensions. I find that unlikely, she said dryly. Ordenrand shrugged. We'll see, and it wouldn't hurt if you tried to bond with your team. And what makes you think I care to bond with them? Her voice didn't change, but it came off as a snap. He straightened up as he faced her. Bonding is the whole point of this. I'm giving you this operation so my subordinates have reason to trust you. If I'm going to make use of you during the royal gathering, I can't be worried that my dissenters will shoot you in the back. And you think one operation will accomplish this? No, but it's better than none. I'm having to hide you in a room and make sure I don't have an incident every day. It's sounding like I'm more trouble than it's worth. Ordenrand frowned, puzzled. What are you getting at? Vampire considered for a moment. What are you trying to accomplish here? An assassination on Mirage. No, that's what you've been assigned. What are you trying to accomplish? Don't play games and riddles with me, Vampira, he growled, freshly aware of his headache. I haven't the patience for it now. Vampira shook her head. From the short time I've been here, everyone, including you, has been against doing this. You refer to it as a suicide mission, and none of you seem to believe you'll make it out alive. A reasonable expectation, I grant, but is that kind of morale that would spell doom for any operation, much less one as insurmountable as this. Are you asking if I'm serious about this? In a manner of speaking. What is your priority in this? Trying to kill Vampira, or just to survive? What started as a scoff turned into a bitter laugh. He had to lay a hand on the hologram projector to keep himself upright. I'm either going to be dead or discredited, and either one is a loss. My only way to victory is to have Mirage die, and you are my greatest chance of seeing that come to pass. Ornament remembered who he was saying this to, and shook himself, straightening. Besides, what concern of it is of yours? What happens to me? Result is the same for you no matter how it ends. Hardly. My deal was with you. It will also die with you. So that's where she's aiming at. I will be commanding an orbit with what we're calling a fleet, he said bitterly with a perfunctory way of looking away. You have nothing to worry about. You're keeping yourself out of the fight? She sounded faintly surprised. I don't intend to give the Council the pleasure of seeing me dead after 2 centuries. If you're truly hoping for the highest chance of success, you'd be underground fighting. You're a quadruple host. You'll be the most powerful one underground besides Mirage. He sighed. Point taken. I'm trying to balance between surviving and my best chance of victory. That is what worries me. Ornrand frowned, turning back to her. How so? You are using half measures. If you cannot settle on your main purpose, you will end up failing both objectives. What will give you the greatest chance of survival will not always give you the greatest chance of success. Ordenrand nodded. I see. Where we've strayed from our original topic, let me ask you this. What is your purpose here? Is my purpose here unclear? Vampire asked. He nodded, walking around a hologram projected to face her. Are you here to see Mirage dead, or to survive so you can leave? You don't want to join us and resist the mere notion of earning my subordinates' trust, yet now you offer advice freely. Vampire remained silent. Ordenrand hesitated. I will admit that I myself am still unsure how I wish to commit myself. I suspect the same goes for you. It defied what he'd learned as a leader, revealing that, but they were both used to being in that role, not confiding in anyone. If they were going to work together, the trust had to start somewhere, and he had more reason than she. Eyeing him up and down, he was relieved to find her expression softening, ever so slightly. My best chance of surviving this is to make sure you're as prepared as possible. Indecision on your part may be fatal for me. So your main purpose is surviving. He was slightly disappointed hearing that. I don't believe Mirage will die any more than those who follow you. I will not die senselessly when there is more to be done. Then why did you agree to help if you believe that? Vampire laughed. His eyes widened at the sound. And if I refused? Even if you weren't inclined to keep me prisoner or execute me, the rest of the anarchists would certainly be. And you were right. I had nothing different planned. This was the only option I had. And if I were to offer a ship so you can leave now? A few moments passed before Vampire sighed. I am still unsure what I would do. The silence hung on both of them. Ornrand's thoughts were still on what Vampire had said, and he found himself opening a portal to her quarters. Vampire didn't flinch, but took a step away from the portal as it grew, facing it with a sight held forward. I think we both have things to decide in the days to come, he told her, nodding his head toward the portal. Go, ready yourself for your assignment. She didn't move. Perhaps he had phrased it poorly. What have you done with Nala? She asked. Taken elsewhere. Her forehead furrowed. Elsewhere? I do not currently know her whereabouts. She's under another of the Council's jurisdiction now. I'm sure she's being well taken care of, however. Well taken care of, Vampire repeated. Does that mean you're training her to fight and die for you? Or is she supposed to be one of your breeders, raised like cattle until you were through with her? Teeth clenching as he spoke, Ornrand struggled to say, We do not treat our hosts badly, and we are most certainly aren't the ones who treat hosts like something meant for the slaughter. Vampire bristled, but still held his eyes. Ordenrand took a deep breath, closing his eyes, and let it out slowly. I will ask after her and have an answer for when you return. Will that suffice? No, but it's the best you will give me, she said dryly. You did hand responsibility of her over to us, he reminded her. Don't take that as a sign of trust. You're merely the best option again. I still consider her my responsibility, even if I've handed her to you. And you will hear from me if you try and do either of what I mentioned. It'll be years before that is even opened for discussion, he said, exasperated. You have nothing to worry about. The last time I thought that, I found out those I followed had lied to me throughout my time serving them. I won't be taking that for granted again. He bowed his head. That was fair. Anything else? Vamper glanced at the open portal. You are aware of Latician's history with the Selman. Ordenrand tilted his head. Was wondering if you would bring him up. She turned to him. The Latician, while unexpected, she emphasized the word to make clear what she thought of him hiding that from her, is no longer my concern, and finding he had been rescued was hardly that surprising, considering the past week. You didn't answer my question. I am aware of their history, yes. I'd wanted to gauge their reactions to each other. The reactions of plasma may prove to be less volatile than what those two will be. Keep them apart. I know how to handle my subordinates, thank you, he said mildly, eyebrows straightening. Vampire scoffed. Since when was Quietus one of your subordinates? His brother might have the reputation of having a temper, but they both do. Quietus is just quieter about it. Her look grew more intense. And if you know what's good for you, you'll make sure it's kept quiet. Before he could respond, she stepped through the portal, and with a scowl, he reluctantly closed it. She had a point, but he had not intended to have the two working together any more than they had to. It was better he saw their reaction to the other than for them to discover the other without his knowledge. Q and Selman, Cylindine and Anderson, Vampire and everybody. Everything has suddenly turned to an overstuffed plasma pack ready to blow at the slightest poke. Ornren took a deep breath and straightened. He decided to keep it together for a little while longer. Keep it together for what? To fall apart spectacularly in front of you on the day of reckoning? What am I trying to accomplish? Vampa's words disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. He was using half measures, thinking he was balancing his chances, but that wouldn't work here, where just surviving would be seen as its own victory. He had to commit to greatest chance at victory or survival. And it was which side he would commit to that disturbed him. As he told Vampra, he did not intend to die, not now. Not for a senseless attempt at removing him from the council. If he survived, he would eventually return to the council. They couldn't keep him out forever, not when he could outlive them all. But that meant he'd be sending men, his men, to die for something he wasn't willing to, and it left a bad taste. It felt as cowardly as what the council was doing to him. It's not like I have any other choice, he thought grimly, as he portaled out of the reading room. End scene. Thoughts?
Good.
Good political stuff. Very interesting. The only thing that I would say is for the slaughter, I would just change that for slaughter, or just a minor thing. Really.
Okay, noted.
So basically, what's the chap's name? Orderbron?
Ordenran. I'll spell it in the chat. Okay.
Ordenron and Vampra, they have to work together, but they don't entirely. There's a question of trust between them. And Orderbron is trying to figure out his choices, whether he should send out his men to be sacrifice themselves or not, and all this other and things like that.
Yes.
So there's some conflict going on in there. That's what I'm mainly getting. I don't know entirely what the background is, except I know that Orderbron and whatnot are rebels against the bad guys. They're rebelling against the bad guys. And Vampire, as you said, the bad guy turned good guy.
Yeah. Basically, arch enemies kind of united in a purpose after a sudden change in allegiances, but don't particularly trust each other. He kind of trusts her, but he knows that she doesn't trust him.
Yeah. There was one kind of awkward sentence. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Something. Blah, blah. You said bitterly with a perfunctory wave looking away or something. I thought that. Something like that. I thought that bit that was a little heavy. Maybe remove part of that. Maybe simplify that a bit. Or recast it a little bit.
Noted.
And what about you, Sailoress chap?
I'm trying to find, but I don't have the context for a lot of this stuff, so I don't really have
I know.
much. Yeah, it just happens. I do like the dialogue. The characters really do come across. You very much get the lack of trust.
Yeah, I think the character work is pretty good.
Although I
That
noticed
is
there's
indeed good to hear. Yay.
a lot of comments on the dialogue. Where there's dialogue, or there's sort of tags that are describing the dialogue as it is happening. And this is a bad habit that I've had to seriously contend with in a lot of my writing. So try to. That's my major piece of advice when writing dialogue. Try to keep it as clean as possible.
Just so you don't do what Rowling did and have like 3 or 4 said Harry fervently on one page.
I have not read any of Harry Potter or anything of J.K. Rowling.
Bother.
She's okay.
Yeah.
She got very, very popular because her stuff is extremely digestible. But it's fun.
It's I mean, her storytelling is good, and the characters are engaging.
Yeah, they're really, really likable.
So yeah, but sometimes the style is a bit sloppy.
Mm.
Any further comment? Or is that all?
I think that's it. I think.
What about Blightow?
Mm. I don't really have much of a comment. I think it works pretty well.
Yay.
So one thing I was wondering about earlier is how all that stuff with Triple relates to the stuff with the Vampire and Hugh and these other people.
So that's next chapter. I know I've kind of abandoned her for a very long portion of time. Triple is one of the dissenters now and is part of the assassination. They're currently on the same base, though they haven't interacted much because Triple hates Vampire's guts.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And there is other history, which I shall not reveal, which makes me make sure to keep them apart.
Ah, okay, but that will eventually play a role.
Eventually. By eventually, I mean you're very, very far in the future.
Okay, flying cars and all that.
Yeah. Their plot lines have now started to intertwine.
Okay, good.
You'll be seeing more of them all now.
Good.
Admittedly, a risky move having one of my 3 main characters be gone for a very long time. But I'm hoping it works out.
Yeah, I mean, probably it's not actually that long. It probably seems longer because the showcase only comes up like ever so often. You only turn up on it ever so often.
Yeah,
So probably when you're actually
probably part
reading,
of it.
yeah.
But there's definitely a good portion where there's 3 characters I consider main, and each 3 have like a section in the beginning where the others isn't really there.
Okay, so the main characters are Triple, Vampira, and
Q.
oh right, all right, that chap, the sarcastic chap.
Yes. My chaotic personality made into a character.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I write him.
How interesting.
Just so you don't turn Blighto into a character.
What?
I'm not that evil. I'm just mostly evil.
I think humanity would be annihilated if that happened.
Annihilated.
Yeah.
Annihilated is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as upgraded to the deluxe non-existence package.
Actually,
it's much nicer when you phrase it that way. I had the goons, I mean, the people in marketing labor for a very long time to come up with that one. We're very proud of it.
and here I thought the word annihilated was a lovely word.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Dud and I are still the 2
I agree.
individuals.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite focus test very well among the target demographic that we're trying to hit. And believe me, when I say hit, I mean, well, just that.
Fair point.
I see. You want to use your stories to beat every single child.
Well,
He wants
something of that nature, yes.
when he publishes his books, he's going to go on hitting people in the head with them.
I'll say this, if your goal is to beat up every single child with your book, I will buy one. I approve of this goal. You have my support.
If you mean teenagers, especially.
Oh yeah, teenagers are sociopathic, assholes.
Pretty much. I mean, we all were at that age.
They seem to get worse. I know it's a thing that's always said. But genuinely, me and my friend occasionally like to keep track of how the fuck our high school is to see just how it's been since we left. And I can say this, there was never a gun brought into our school while we were there. And yet I think I've heard of at least 2 occasions where that's been since we've left.
Yeah, we didn't have any guns in school either that I can remember.
I brought a knife to school once. I really did. I mean, it was for a movie that we were shooting, and I cleared it with the dean 3 weeks in advance, and I brought it in early and kept it in his office, and then waited until after school, at which point I was accompanied to the shoot by a staff member, and once the shoot was done, I went into my bag and went home and never came again. So we handled it in exactly the way we are supposed to do it, and we crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, so it was actually kind of boring. But hey, I brought a knife to school.
Technically, it's true.
Yeah, I'm playing for the achievements there.
It counts.
Someone at my school stole a toilet. I don't know how.
Uh-huh.
I genuinely don't know how. It was because of the TikTok trend.
Someone at school gave me what they said was a reefer to give to my brother, but as I suspected, it was actually just some lined paper that had been wrapped together. That was about as bad as it got in terms of criminal activity. But of course, we're talking about the 70s, so What do you expect? We were all innocent little lambs in those days.
Valerian was a little lamb, his face was white as snow, shouting out the battle cry of freedom.
Kill him dead.
About what? The battle cry of freedom is a classic.
Yeah, I prefer marching through Georgia.
I don't. Do I look like a little lamb to you?
You are white.
Well, yeah. Lots of things are white. Polar bears are white.
Technically, they are black with white fur.
Well, it counts.
It's like that whole thing of our zebras white or black.
Zebras
black,
are. Zebras are both, so they're diverse, so they're woke.
Well, are they black with white stripes or white with black stripes?
They're biracial.
That's how we can solve racism. We need to make everyone look like a zebra.
Good idea. I'm all for it.
All right, Dunn, you got something for us?
Give him a minute.
Indeed, I do. Indeed, I do. Let me pull it up. 1 second. So this is Lords of Eternal Night. So up to this point, the Malachor has been going around giving magical artifacts. I decided to try and avoid the Lord of the Rings ripoff feel by changing it from rings to just various artifacts. Like Kamul now is a gauntlet rather than a ring. The head of that, the leader of the Azrith, Arterazon, has a crown. Farah as a gauntlet. So the main thing that has happened is that they're thinking that they are going to be going to bringing a bunch of people to Olyntius to be able to help them to be able to defend. But
Who would defend
now,
who? Who would defend who?
So the idea is that Morgamir, Amora, one of the other Azrith, are going to another group of people with the intent to get them to defend Olyntius with them. There's a slight problem though.
So defend them against Hoo-Ha, right?
The
Malachor?
She actually, who are their ancient enemies.
Okay, not Malachor.
No, Malachor is the person getting them on side.
Okay, but I really think what he should be handing out his credit cards.
Fair enough. Indeed, his credit cards are clearly the most important thing that he can get about.
Yep.
All right. Chapter 6, The Poisoner. Imaris walked through the shadow world reflection of Ithilbean far to the southwest of the continent near the ocean. Cloak flowing around her ankles, she walked along the ragged wall that surrounded the step pyramid near the edge of the cliff overlooking the ocean. Pale, invisible eyes narrowed, Imaris looked down at the Sidhe who were gathered around the grand leaf-carved altar at the top of the blood-stained pyramid. They looked more human than their watery cousins, the Deep Ones, many of their strange fluid mages, floating among the crowd, further highlighting the differences, each mage a new misshapen monster. However, there were things that gave away the Shi's lack of humanity. For one thing, their irises and pupils were as white as snow. Oh, while the whites of their eyes were in various different colors, from blue to green to white and to golden and purple. Their ears were spiked, multiple rounded ridges giving them a fin-like appearance. The strangest part of their experience were the strange root-like ridges that ran down their backs and arms, their nobles possessing bone growths that emerged from their heads like crowns. Imaris wasn't close enough to see but she had seen enough dead Shi to know that their teeth were unnaturally pointed, almost like a predator's fangs. Despite the strangest of their other features, the Shi possessed an ethereal beauty. Each man or woman of this strange people, a perfect specimen in face and form. Some of their human victims were probably bewitched away from their families by the fair folk, she thought grimly as the men, women, and children were dragged up the steps. Curious to see more, she stepped out of the Umbriel and into the physical world so she could see more than silvery outlines and striated ash-like ridges. What are they doing with all these humans? She wondered, gazing with rapt attention as the Shi began to drag the humans to the temple at careful intervals until there was one on each step of the pyramid. There must be at least 500 people about to be killed here, Imaris thought as the elves placed their knives on the exposed necks of their poor victims, the fluid mages raising their arms and beginning to chant as one. I should have brought the others with me. Imaris reached out a hand. Perhaps I can at least lessen the effects of whatever spell they're trying to accomplish. Focusing her power, Imaris stepped back into the Umbriel, formed a bow out of her spirit, then pulled back the string and fired. An arrow formed from gray essence flew toward the temple nearest to her, then struck the stones in an explosion of poisonous fumes. Both the murderers and their victims fell over, sickly green liquid pouring from their mouths and staining the stones of the temple. Emotionlessly, Imaris turned her bow and prepared to loose again, but this time a pillar of light blasted upward from the light top of the pyramid right as the arrow was about to fly. Hissing, Imaris turned her bow and prepared to loose again, but this time a pillar of kissing, Imaris covered her face with her arms so that the blinding light wouldn't burn her eyes. While she was distracted, a set of screams accompanied the remaining Shi slicing the necks of their victims. Tentatively, Imaris opened her eyes and peered through the blinding light to see what was going on. She paused as a veritable river of blood began flowing down the steps of the pyramid to the ocean. As she watched, the waves began to rise in the largest tidal storm she'd ever seen. Without hesitation, Imaris fled into the Umbriel and pulled her decayed soul through the Aesir to Olyntius. As soon as she reached the island, she saw a trio of Azriths standing atop the tower close to the Aesir. Unable to push the image of the tidal wave out of her head, Imaris pulled. Okay, she'd been expecting Arterazon, Morgamir, and Farah, but instead of the prince, it was a large man with a ram's horn helm concealing his pale face and orange eyes. Imaris! Farah exclaimed, you returned. Indeed, Imaris ignored the princess and turned to her father. The enemy is going to destroy Olyntius. An attack is coming? Arterazon leaned forward intently. When? It's not an attack. It's a natural disaster. Imaris explained quickly. The enemy sacrificed nearly 300 humans and are using their blood to create a tidal wave to destroy the island. Faces concealed behind their mask, Arterazon exchanged inscrutable looks with their new friend, then nodded slowly. It would appear that we are left with no options, the king said in resignation. We must risk a teleportation ritual if our people are to survive. I'll start gathering the people, Farah said quickly, then shot away. You were right, Arterazon inclined his head toward the new Azrith. Not for the reasons I'd like. Their new brother glanced toward Amaris. So, this is Amaris, he bowed slightly. My name is Kamul, the Hammer of Brave. Amaris raised her eyebrows. Your reputation precedes you. Expected you to be taller. That's the general reaction from Olympian giants. Kamul shrugged and turned his attention toward Artarazon. How can I help? The people will know your armor and gauntlet by sight. Artarazon placed his hand on the other man's shoulder. Go, warn them to gather in the great tower in the center of the city. We must have as small a circumference as possible for the ritual to work. As you say, sire. Kamul flew away, body transformed to smoke as he departed from the shadow world. This is a terrible risk, Artarazon. Amaris closed her fist and glanced toward the ocean, and we don't have much time. We don't have many choices left if we're going to save even a fraction of the people. Oh. Artarazon took a deep breath. I can only guess at what will happen. I've tried this, Artarazon. Amaris closed her fist. I tried to use the Umbriel to heal my husband. The explosion to that place with one of the Nibelung destroyed his mind and rotted his body. The alternative is allowing them to die in the tidal wave, Artarazon said mildly. Always so calm. Amaris glared at her friend, then exhaled a breath from her invisible lungs. I hope that you can live with the consequences. I will have to. Artarazon let his shoulders slump. I have only a choice of evils. We can read another chapter, I think. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, chapter 7, The Warlord. Orange eyes narrowed. Kamul watched the people flood into the great tower. Our in the center of the island. The Azrith is guiding the people as close together as possible. Spolt on the top floor before filling the next one. So we'll diminish the effort required for the spell by spreading the people vertically. He ran his hand over the stones on the wall next to him. I suppose it must be a focus point, as it must be because the focus isn't as spread over a wide distance. Good deduction, brother. Kamul turned to see Amaris glide over to him, her ragged cloak and empty hood with a metal lacework grasping onto her head like a spider. For this spell... each of us will have a point at the edge of the circle, and the further apart we are, the weaker we will be. I can see that. Kamul clenched his fist. So, what must we do? Ooh. Empty hood tilted. Amaris made a circle with her two index fingers and thumb. A circle of dark smoke appearing over her fingers, strange designs and protrusions giving form and shape. We must focus our powers in on the spell circle until the people are sent to Mordrith through a tunnel leading through the shadow world. She explained, moving her hands apart and having her thumb and forefinger meet at the tips. Our purpose is to maintain efficiency, the efficacy of the tunnel between the two spaces. If our concentration is broken, the tunnel will be destroyed and the people will die. Best to make it count, Kamul said dryly. Indeed. Amaris did not sound terribly amused. It is going to take time, less time if they are able we're moving physically, but we will have to maintain our focus at all costs. How long do you think? Kamul closed his fist, a sense of trepidation and rising inside him, almost like the deep breath before you plunged into battle. We'll have to move quick, since we probably only have a few hours before the wave hits us. Imaris ran her metal-clad fingers over her other hand. Mordrith is already partway in this world, so using that as the second part of our anchor will work well. Though the consequences are going to be steep on all of us, even if we are successful. What are the consequences? Kamul tilted his head. Mortals are not meant to enter the shadow world. Even with our talismans, our bodies are changed through exposure to the energy of this place. Imaris turned her hand over a few times as if examining the metal gauntlets encasing her invisible flesh. The tunnel will protect the people from dying, but the effect on them will be significant. Exactly what that is, I do not know, but this is a last resort for a reason. If they are alive and free, that is enough. Kamul clenched his... All nodded toward the horizon. Life and freedom is all we can ask for, he thought. You would be surprised. Now, it was Imaris' turn to be dry. Some would choose death, then suffer the alternative. Maybe. Kamul admitted, but we can't just let them die. No, but will they thank us for what we're about to do is another matter entirely. Imaris sounded sad. Many are on the mainland already, but there are still thousands that need to escape. Before they could continue, Farah dropped down next to him, her black steel segmented mask covering her face. We filled up the tower, but while the way is open, they can run through. I hope they don't whine too much about leaving behind anything they could not carry. Kamul smirked at the thought of the Pradelantians being forced to carry as much as they could. A few did, but they understand the alternative is losing their possessions and their lives. That's good. Good. Imaris took a deep breath. Kamul, once we form the circle, then you and I must go into the shadow world to maintain the portal. Your raw strength without much experience as a freshly made Azrith will work best for buffering the tunnel. I'll be there to help you while Farah and Artarazon keep the portal into the shadow world open. All right, Kamul nodded. Shall we begin? Imaris nodded her empty hood and shot away to another point on the square. However, Farah stayed behind. Her mask dissipated away to smoke, revealing her face, black veins ringing her orange eyes. I'll see you on the other side, Hammer of Brave, she said. I wouldn't want you to go without having a chance to see what you're made of. Kamul tilted his head toward her. There was something about her tone he wasn't sure if he could identify. Likewise, he nodded slowly in respect to a fellow warrior. We'll spar again. Oh, we will, but I'd rather use other weapons methods than a sword. Kamul was... Farah's smirk was telling. Now, that was unexpected, but not unpleasantly so. Well, you are forward, aren't you, princess? Kamul chuckled. Still smirking, Farah turned away and flew off in a cloud of green and black smoke. Now he wanted to live through this even more. A princess of Olympias, he thought. What? as he began drawing on the power of his gauntlet, as Imaris and Arterazon instructed. Even after I was freed from slavery, I did not believe that one such as her would take an interest in someone like me. Darkness began flowing around him and merging into a large circle, strange patterns along the edges and in the center between the edge lines. Ready, he said, pushing power into his voice. Good. Arterazon's voice was clear in his ear. Now transfer your burden to me, while Imaris does so with Farah. It took a bit of effort, but the burden shifted smoothly. Arterazon grunted with effort, though what was through what was probably gritted teeth. The High King grated out, "Go!" Kamul stepped inside the circle and slid into the shadow world. As soon as the striated world appeared around him, he froze. A pillar of green smoke had formed around on the tower, extending high into the air and spinning in a dizzying circle. Imaris walked up next to him, and though now she could see that she was in the shadow world rather than the physical world, he could see her drawn, unnaturally white face and red eyes. Now, do as I do, she said calmly, only as she raised her hands, the amulet around her neck glowing a bright red from the stone encased in a black iron framework. Kamul could feel her raw strength emanating around her, not quite as strong as Arterazon, but something about her made her seem older than anything he'd experienced, except his mind pushed away the thought that trickled from the crevices of suppressed memory. Following her example, and ignoring whatever memories weren't coming through, Kamul drew on the power of his gauntlet. He pushed it into the roiling curtain of power, solidifying it with as much strength as he could manage. Immediately, the strain began descending on him, a horrible and spiritual and mental weight that seemed to press down him with the force of a castle. Groaning, he and Imaris watched as the people began to vanish. It's working, he rasped, fighting against fighting against the pressure with all his strength. They're going through. Don't celebrate yet. Imaris's hands quivered and her voice was distorted and hoarse. We don't know what greater strain will happen as the spell continues, or what will happen to the thousands of people moving through the portal on the other side. She was right about the strain. As the spell kept going, it was like it felt like something was attempting to tear him apart. Groaning, they kept on pushing against the encroaching pressure. Pain started to build inside Kamul's mind and chest as the spell continued, as if someone were pressing a milestone on his chest and a vice on his head. Keep going, Imaris groaned, voice hoarse. Almost there. Kamul dug deep into his few remaining vestiges of strength, shoving outward with one more push. All the remaining people abruptly vanished, and Kamul collapsed to the ground, vision fuzzing. He was quickly drawn out of his exhaustion when something began appearing in the shadow world as clearly as it must be in the physical one. With a loud crash, the world and the island began to shatter around them, smoke rising from the fissures and cracks that split them. The land. Arterazon and Farah appeared next to them, looking even more ragged and exhausted than Imaris and Kamul. Sensing her distress, Kamul rushed to Farah and took her in his arms. Gratefully, she sagged into him, clearly spent. The island is breaking apart. Arterza on Great Izamaris did the same for him. The spell has broken the wall between the physical world and the shadow world, and now the island is filling with poisonous fumes. It would appear that the spell has even worse effects than we thought possible. Farah leaned over and gazed around with an expression of sadness. The wave is in sight and will cover up what we have done, but this place will remain as a blight upon the sea for all time. Unable to contain his curiosity, Kamal slipped into the shadow world and shifted into the physical world and gagged at the poison as fumes all around began choking him. Growling, he pulled on a little bit of power and pushed the fumes away, but he still sagged to the earth as the ground quaked and cracked under him. The buildings all around him began falling, their foundations cracking as the once fine structures collapsed or even split apart. As the island began to slowly descend into the ocean, a wave that topped even the tallest building at Alentia surged toward him at a terrible speed. There was no chance that any could survive the impact of the wave. Closing his eyes, Kamal shifted back into the shadow world as the wave crashed into the island and shattered it. The four Azrith knelt as the illusory waves washed around him, looking more like sand than water. Despite footing in the shadow world vanishing, they still remained standing as if they were on solid rock. My home, Farah whispered, black tears flowing down her face and mingling with the striated veins around her eyes. It's all destroyed. All gone. Amaris remained silent as she stared around, and her drawn face betraying very little. Let us be gone from this place. She pulled Arteris onto his feet, the former king of Valentius' face betraying how haggard he was. There is nothing for us here. And that's the end of the chapters, I think.
Wow. So you said this was some sort of thing to do with Lord of the Rings, like a reimagining?
Originally it was kind of similar. Like one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of explore the idea of the concepts of a ring wraith that aren't really gone into in Tolkien's Legendarium. And as well as making the elves the villains, at least for the first book.
Of course, the elves would be the villains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, these people used the magic stuff that Malachar gave them, but to defeat the enemies, but then it destroyed their homeland.
Not quite. Basically, what happened was that the elves did what the theory is for the theory that the children of the forest were the people that caused the doom of Valyria.
I'm not sure I've heard that one. I've heard the one about them. Well, we all know about the one where they created the White Walkers.
Or I guess maybe not the faceless man, and caused the doom of Valyria.
I've heard of something like that, but I don't know the exact details of it.
The idea is that the faceless men created a massive blood sacrifice, and that allowed and that created the doom of, and that brought down the doom of Valyria on the that caused the eruption to happen.
Okay, so these people caused the doom of whatever it was, and okay, the elves caused the doom of. Yeah, sorry, I got a little confused from the last.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the elves caused the doom of Valyria, or the Atlantis type story in this case. And now, however, that turned it out to backfire because the people who are in charge of the magic users of Olyntius decided that they should try something else to try and ensure the survival of the people, and it turned out that it had way worse consequences than they thought it would, that they just ended up destroying their own island anyway.
Okay, yeah, but they weren't using Melikar's magic thing, or were
They were, yes.
they? And is that what the Umbriel or whatever it is?
The Umbriel is essentially where they get their power from. And it's kind of like where their powers it's like the conduit that they use their powers through. It's what their devices give them power to use.
Okay, but it's not a physical item.
It is a physical item. So the Umbriel is kind of a netherworld space, but they're talismans like Kamul's Gauntlet, Farah's Gauntlet, Arterazon's Crown, the amulet that Imaris wears. All of them give them access to the power, but they are it's kind of a recent thing with a lot of them. They don't really have the ability to use it very well yet. Some of them do, but they're inexperienced and trying to still figure things out. And they don't know fully all the consequences of their actions. And this is kind of an example of them doing something, kind of toying with trying to use powers that they don't understand for what is technically a good purpose, but but the problem then becomes, was it worth it?
Bummer.
All right.
Okay.
Any thoughts? Concerned?
It's interesting, very interesting. A perspective that you don't usually get from the old classic fantasy stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of just what if, like, a lot of at least a few of the Nazgul were like a dad and his two kids, and then someone that the girl fell in love with, and eventually their bodies slowly go away and they're unable to see each other, and even the memory of what they look like vanishes as time goes on.
Picturing a Nazgul sitcom now. With a laugh track and a Seinfeld theme. Scene change.
That would be very funny. I will concur.
The ring race.
Yeah, you know what? If Rings of Power was a freaking stupid sitcom, it would be better than what it is, honestly.
Mhm.
Be way better. Freaking
More,
stupid show.
more amusing, certainly.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's another issue with the frickin' Rings of Power. It's not funny. It's not even remotely funny. It's like just dumb, and lame, and completely uninteresting. Actually, I admit that I am a little bit more annoyed now because I watched a video. Has anybody ever heard of Tolkien Untangled?
No, what is that?
Basically, it's a guy on YouTube who does a lot of Tolkien lore videos, and one of the things that he did was he did try to do a Silmarillion adaptation. He never watched Rings of Power beyond the first 2 episodes, and then he just created a 5-season outline for
The Silmarillion.
for the Rings of Power, and I was actually honestly super impressed by how good it was by the end. And he actually made a good point that putting in Aarion is actually even more sexist than not including her.
Who?
And,
Oh, the lady.
the Isildur's sister. Because basically it just means that, oh, she's not important. She was never mentioned in the Legendarium, i.e. she's not important. So that just so they since and so it would have been better if she was Isildur's wife or future wife, and because then she actually has a point in the story, other than she's probably just going to die with Numenor and never be mentioned again.
Well, we'll see. Maybe she'll end up being the main character of the entire show.
Nah, that's stupid as Galadriel. It is known.
Yeah, but Galadriel dies because Aarion kills her and then takes her place.
Oh, that would be a twist worth watching, definitely.
And she says, "I'm the main character now." And Galadriel's like,
Look at me. Look at me. I'm the main character now.
Fair enough. Okay. Malachard never explains.
There are some things
Okay.
one can't buy. For everything else, there's Malachard.
Do they have credit cards in Accra?
Not yet.
They will.
I'll get to it eventually.
Sounds like it, yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a great time.
Indeed. Merry Christmas to all. Now we're all gonna die. The night Santa went crazy. The night Saint Nick went insane. All right. Well, we will all see you guys later. Adios.
Have a riot.
Mm.